says we're live. Happy Thanksgiving week for all of those in the U.S. I'm extra grateful this week to Supconnect and to get to interview another legend, Jim Terrell. Amazing man on so many levels, and I know people are excited to, hopefully we'll get some questions. I know people had real specific questions they wanted to ask him because what a brain to pick. Originally from Milford, Ohio, where I have to remember there's something dedicated to him there. We'll talk about that. Amazing history, a 4-time Olympian, Pan Am champion, many times a national sprint champion in canoe, a canoeist. I'm wearing my only shirt that says canoe on it. C1, so we'll talk some about that, but really every watercraft there is, he is well-versed in, and known best though as founder and owner of QuickBlade Paddles. So excited to pick his brain, to talk story. Jimmy, I'm not going to keep you as long as Chris Parker did. I know you guys are great friends. I know we could talk forever, but I know you're also a super busy man. So Supconnect, thank you. This is live. It's also recorded and it goes on to YouTube channels. And we have a Facebook group, and I definitely want to post some pictures of a few things that we're going to be talking about today with Jimmy. So let me see if I can find him. We're going to go down here. No request to join, but let's see who's there. Ivan, Adrian, hello. Hugo, Ricky, Bobby. Hi, Jake and May and Bernie. But where is the man himself? That's funny that it's suggesting people. That's not who I'm looking for. I'm looking for Jimmy Terrell, even though we're really glad all of you are here. Thanks for joining us. Always fun that people are from all over the place. One of the reasons we have this in the middle of the day on the West Coast, which isn't great for everyone I know, hopefully you can take a lunch break if you're at work, is that that way it's late evening in Europe, early morning, earlier in Hawaii, and not too late on the East Coast. So we decided this was a good time to have it. Oop, Paddle Safari, hello. Glad to have you here. But hopefully I can find Jimmy. If anybody has his phone number, Ivan, you want to tell him how to get on? Tiffany, good to have you here. And Jack, hello. Lots of friends and some of our regulars. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see. I know this was new and I probably didn't give, oh, I just saw that he joined. Jimmy TQB. I hope you're all following him. If not now, go follow him right now if you aren't already. I saw you in there. There you are. Jimmy, I'm not really sure what to call him. Jim sounds, I mean, such an important person in our industry. Seems like I should be formal, but he's also one of the nicest
I made
guys
it.
ever. There he is. Fantastic. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties get on there.
No problem. I can see you. I can see QuickBlade. I can see paddles. Perfect setup. It's like you're a pro at this.
I may have done it before, once or twice, but I'm not very good on Instagram.
I don't know if you heard me joking that I'm not going to keep you as long as Chris Parker. I know you guys are buddies, but I think maybe a total of 5 hours or something because you had 2 different sessions.
Yeah.
Because you had to re-record.
You'll never know. Yeah.
It would be quality to do 3 hours with you because you have so many stories to tell. You have so much information in your head. You really have been a leader in our industry in so many ways. But we have to back up because before stand-up paddling, you're a lifelong paddler, lifelong innovator, I think a real thought leader in so many ways, but you're a 4-time Olympian. So go back to explain to people who don't know what C1, what being a canoeist is.
You know, it's the most popular sport in the Olympics. Everyone knows that, sprint canoe. Just ask anyone on the street. But no, it's kidding aside, canoeing is the best thing about it's a lifelong sport. You know, even though the high knee Olympic style canoeing is quite difficult to do and to learn, paddling is, you know, a sport you can do for life. I just was in Ohio and paddled with a friend of mine who's 99 years old. And he's still paddling, racing, running half marathons and everything. So
wow. It
just goes to show you, I started when I was 3 years old paddling in the canoe with my mom and dad down a river in Little Miami River in Ohio on the east side of Cincinnati. And that kind of spawned on, my dad was always an avid canoeist, and he started a canoe rental business when we were young.
Oh.
So we started going to local canoe races around the Midwest at that time. We're actually kind of popular, kind of like when Sup races started around here. Back in the day, there were a lot of small towns in the Midwest that would have these canoe races on the weekends as part of a summer festival, typically. Like my hometown of Milford, Ohio, had what was called Frontier Days, and the canoe racing was always a big part of that. So when I was 12 years old, or when I was 7, my dad signed me up. Actually, I was only 6. My mom and dad signed me up for a race with my next door neighbor, Chris Beck. And we raced a 2-man canoe. I was in the front, he was in the back. So the canoe was going down the river with me in the front, riding high. But we got like a 2nd place trophy. I think there was only 3 or 4 boats in the race. But I remember that was like my first canoeing trophy. And ever since then, I was always into racing. I love paddling. And then all of a sudden, getting the race, just kind of one thing led to another. And eventually my parents met Roland Mullen, who was a 3-time Olympian from Cincinnati. He was on the 72, 76, and 80 Olympic teams. So
Wow.
He kind of helped mentor our whole family, basically, and we got into canoeing. And my sisters actually both did high Neil canoe too for a while. And this was when we showed up at the first race, and we got put aside, and they told my mom, "Hey, these are girls. Like, girls don't do canoeing." So back then, they didn't have canoeing events for women, and we didn't know that. So then my sister switched to kayaking. I stayed with the canoe. But fast forward to now, we just had Nevin Harrison from Seattle win a gold medal, the first women's Olympic medal awarded in canoe, sprint canoe kayak, and she won the gold this year, and she's only 19.
That's amazing. Long time coming. Yeah, and I appreciate it. I saw your post about how your sisters didn't get to do it, but finally it's equitable.
So it's exciting, and so what got me into making paddles was actually I started making paddles for myself back in the day. I was always trying to get an edge with equipment and try and come up with something better that was out there, and always kind of thinking outside the box of instead of looking at what everybody was winning with, how do you make it better, kind of I was always kind of a tinkerer, so to speak. And my dad was an engineer, and Roland, my mentor, was making his own paddles, so that kind of helped spawn on the interest in making paddles. So that's how canoeing kind of started. And that was in the late 80s, early 90s when we actually started putting QuickBlade stickers on the first paddles. The old logo was a saw blade and it said QuickBlade. We later redid our website. Drew Story redid our website, and we did a couple of new logos, and came to what we use now as the little Q, little B is our logo. But anyway, outrigger canoeing became a big part of my business after Sprint Canoe Paddles. Actually, I made Sprint Kayak Paddles for a while, which became good surf ski paddles, and good kayak paddles for the guys that do the ultra marathoning, like the Texas Water Safari and that. And when adventure racing got popular, we always made a lightweight, strong carbon fiber kayak paddle. And then it was in the late 90s we started making outrigger paddles. And then when the early 2000s, shoot, it was 16, 17 years ago now. I remember Sydney was just born when I met Laird Hamilton, Dave Kalama, and those kind of guys that were kind of getting into stand-up paddle surfing, but they knew and recognized early on that it was going to be more about surfing. It was going to be more about just anybody getting out and paddling, and for exercise, and inevitably racing. So that's how I got into stand-up paddling and making the stand-up paddles for these guys. And then it kind of, one thing led to another. Ended up meeting Ron House and Jerry Lopez, Sparky, and from Rainbow Sandals, who decided to put on the bow of the paddle. And you were around during the growth of all that. Chuck Patterson, Kyle Mochizuki, I could name off a handful of guys. Even Rich Long, a lot of people in the outrigger community know Rich Long as through outrigger canoeing, but he was, from my recollection, one of the first guys doing stand-up, paddleboarding down in Dana Point. He was surfing a little bit. Yeah, Rob Pelkey, Mitch Kahn, there's a Rob Rojas. Those are all the, EJ. Yeah, a lot of the names that pop into my head just from the early days. The first BOP that was held. So, but it's been a long, fun ride, and we've been a big part of the movement, particularly on the racing side. I enjoy racing. I enjoy competing. I enjoy trying to make the best paddles I can for the best paddlers. I was never focused on trying to sell the most paddles, but just always trying to make them better, really.
Yeah. And, well, I think, we've had some discussions. My very first real purchase, once I started racing, even though I was racing on and all around, was a QuickBlade paddle, because I still think that's the best investment, the best place to start. Once you know what you need, I hate seeing those really heavy paddles on people who are really catching the bug. Even if they're not racing,
Yeah.
they're going to damage their shoulders. It's just amazing the difference between a good paddle
Yeah.
and a sinker paddle, which are still out there, which I can't believe, but.
And sometimes you can't appreciate a really good paddle until you've used that heavy, clunky one first. But it is important to get one early on. I think it'll help make you a better paddler when you have a good paddle in your hands. And it kills me when I see the people in the rental business that are just trying to buy equipment that's reliable and affordable. And in the end, you hope those rental people are looking at return customers or at least referrals, so you want people to have a good experience their first time, paddleboarding, so you hope they're on a nice stable board that works pretty well with a nice lightweight paddle that works well so that they have a good experience and hopefully, tell their friend, oh, it was so much fun, I'm going to do it again, or you want to come with, and you hope that they become sort of ambassadors in growing the sport versus, just getting them out, one time and done kind of thing. So
True. So true. Yeah. That first experience should be positive and wonderful if they're on the right equipment. And I worry about those who have a really heavy paddle to start and maybe they can't do it or it's too heavy or it's too hard.
Yeah. Like when you first time you go skiing, if you rent, a junky pair of skis where the boots are uncomfortable when your feet get cold, you're probably not going to want to go skiing again.
Yep. Get those good new parabolic skis. Exactly. Actually, there's probably something newer. I'm not that up to date on that. But you have been an innovator in so many ways and a thought leader too. I mean, I always think of, I know you like to stay out of paddle ticks, but it's important to talk about things. And really early on, we had that Silver Blade Regatta, which was similar, of course, to what you had done in the Olympics. And you tried to push the edge and get us to think a little bit by bringing, I think you paddled all on one side, which people hadn't seen before. You kind of put your knee lower, but not down. Like, is this still stand-up paddling? Because I think we're still defining ourselves. And I think those conversations are super important. And I loved the whole discussion of I was ready, if I was a manufacturer, to join you with the 4-meter. What was the board?
Yeah, when we couldn't decide on 12.6 or 14, like you were never going to, make everybody happy. And I had this idea of actually 4 meters is in between, ends up being about 13'1", like right in between 12.6 and 14. But the main reason behind my thought of the 4-meter board, if you look back on my interview with Chris about that, was what I saw was the big, driving factor in growing SUP was the user friendliness of the craft. The boards were wide enough, they were stable enough, anybody could get on and have a good experience the first time. But once we got into the skinnier and skinnier, more competitive boards, Justin, I'm doing a live interview right now. One of my workers just came by to bring some paddles over to ship, actually.
That's great. We love meeting dogs. Bring them on.
And Maverick's here, my watchdog.
Maverick. Hey, Maverick.
So anyway, so the 4-meter board, the idea was I saw the boards progressing to, looking like Olympic sprint canoes, which my fear was that was going to make the sport so difficult to get started if the equipment evolved into that. So I was trying to protect the user friendliness of the craft by perhaps imposing a minimum width requirement that could eventually be reduced, as like if you look at Starboard and some of the first brands that started putting concaves into the race boards and some things to try and make them more stable. We're able to get boards that are narrower now that are still stable as like the old 26, 27 wide boards. Yep. But, that's at the point where that you don't limit innovation, but as innovation comes along, you can reduce your parameters or your limits to the boards to, keep in mind, keeping them user friendly. If you look at Olympic sprint canoeing in America, it's a very small niche sport, It's just the fastest way to paddle a canoe that we've found there's no rules that tell you have to kneel on one knee and paddle on one side. The sport sort of evolved into that, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I used to always say if, Connor or Kai or one of these young guys that's up and coming stood in an Olympic canoe and could, paddle faster than the guy kneeling, everybody'd be standing, and it could evolve to that someday. But the way I've been seeing, when you watch the ICF Worlds that just happened in Hungary, you were actually there. And they did it in Hungary, which is known for Olympic sprint canoeing. First I thought they were going to do it at Szeged, which is one of the international regatta courses in Europe that's one of the best in the world. And they have the world championships there all the time. I was assuming they were going to do it in proper lanes, just like the ICF sprint canoe does. But the way did the format was a little bit different, and they didn't have like full lined lanes because you could see people drifting all around, you know, in between lanes a little bit. But yeah, you know, you look at, you know, most people that try and push rules on our sport have a hidden agenda behind them. You know, like if it's a bigger guy, they're going to lobby for bigger boards, for example, or whatever it might be. For me, my hidden agenda is I want to see the sport grow because I want to sell more paddles, right? But you know, but I do want to see the sport grow, get more popular, and be more all-inclusive. And you know, trying to keep those things in mind was kind of the idea behind the, you know, the restriction of the boards. I actually had an idea where you limit how much the boards can be dug out or recessed, with a really simple way to check that. You know, I had an idea already, figured out how to do that, so you could just quickly jig a board and, you know, 5 minutes, get the stamp on it, and it's good for the rest of the year, or, you know, from then on, for example.
Well, I think that's super important. And I don't, even though you are a company owner and founder, I think of your insights as definitely being the big picture and almost independent thoughts. And I think we need more thinkers like you. So I want to encourage you to keep throwing out those ideas and sharing them with people. I think of Chris as one of those too. I mean, of course, we all have opinions and get places.
Yeah, of course.
And I try to be too. I don't want to be just one-sided. I want to be about stand-up and its growth, which includes everything from the beginner and getting people in to progressing and finding whatever their niche is, or maybe it's just always staying at that recreational level. But that's the only way to grow.
And you need to have more perspectives looking at the sport for it to really, you know, grow in the right way. You know, sometimes when the athletes dictate the progression of a sport, it doesn't always work out to the best interest of the sport. You have to look at the appeal to an audience, for example. Like, you know, like if people aren't interested in our sport, people don't come and watch, people don't support it, you don't get sponsors, and in the end it's a handful of people out paddling against each other, you know. So you have to kind of look at things from, you know, different perspectives, you know, outside of just being an athlete in the sport or a manufacturer in the sport, or, you know, look at the big picture sponsors. But, you know, there's actually a lot of things that go into, you know, whether a sport succeeds or doesn't succeed. And then even how do you measure if a sport's successful or unsuccessful? You know, being in the Olympics doesn't necessarily make a sport successful or not, or, you know, like, you know, in the end, for me, I think what makes a sport successful is how many people can go out and enjoy it, really, you know, in the end. So.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like we've talked to a lot of people who saw in different places in the world a real second surge during the pandemic. A really funny byproduct was people getting outdoors. Lots more inflatables in this area, which hadn't been popular before, even though they have been other places in the world. So certainly more backwards paddles than I've ever seen. We need your little poster to be placed.
You know, I've changed my thought on that. I used to have a sticker that said right and wrong. Now, when I see somebody using a paddle backwards, I don't tell them it's wrong, and I don't tell them it's backwards. I just say, hey, if you tried it the other way, it works more efficiently that way. Yes. Because if they got a smile on their face and they're moving forward, it's not wrong, right? That's the way I look at it.
That's what I try to do too. You're doing great, but it'll be even better, easier, and more
efficient. So now I'm trying to coach people into saying, don't say, hey, your paddle's backwards. I go, no, it's not wrong. It's not back. You know, they'll get embarrassed and they might not want to come back. Like you just, hey, try it the other way. It's designed to go the other way. It might work more efficient for you. And then again, I get people that tell me, no, I tried it that way. It still works better this way. And this way. Okay.
I love that. I can't imagine they're saying that to you. They have no idea who you are.
Like, yeah, they do. And hey, what do I know? I designed them to go the other way, but if they can make them work the other way, that's fine.
That's great. Hey, I want to go back to the start of SUP for you, because I didn't realize it was way back to Dave Kalama and Laird Hamilton. So did you see them doing it? Did you meet them at a trade show? You were making outrigger paddlers, and I know they're multi-craft, you know, especially
actually it was in the early 2000s. So my daughter's 16, so I don't think she was born yet. It was like around 2003 or 2004 maybe. Wow. When I got a call from Drew Iola. He's from Malibu. If he's watching, I doubt he's watching, but somebody who knows him is probably watching. But he phoned me up because he saw my website. We were making, you know, QuickBlade had a website for Sprint Canoe paddles and outrigger paddles. So he told me what he was doing and everything, and I said, oh, that sounds interesting. And so I said, I actually want to try it. It was around the same time a really good friend of mine, Devlin Murphy, had gotten this double rail sandwich board from a shaper in Ventura named Bill Bragg. And he had this giant board, and he had kind of heard about stand-up too. So he had a board, and it was before I had met Ron House. But anyway, I made this paddle for Drew, and then made one for myself and started paddling with Devlin and locally here. And then Drew gave his paddle to Laird to try, and then Laird liked it, and Laird phoned me up and said, hey, I want to get some more of these. So I made a few more. We were up in staying at a friend's place and on Rincon Point. And on the way home, I stopped to drop them off for Laird.
Nice.
And I missed him. I ended up leaving him at Coogie's there in Malibu for him, but he picked them up later and called me up and said, hey, I want to come up and I want to talk to you about this whole thing. So we met, had lunch at Coogie's. And that's when we both got excited because he was talking about, hey, this is not just about surfing. It's like, it's going to be on rivers, lake. Like Laird had that vision, long before anyone else did. And I was all on board because when we used to rent canoes to people, when you went through shallow water, we always stood up to see where you're going. And the one thing I liked about high kneel paddling was being in the high kneel position. You have a much better perspective on the water, and you can see more around you because being just in the high kneel position, you're not, when you're sitting, you can't quite see what's exactly behind you. But when you're standing, you can rotate all the way around 360, and you got better vision on what's on the shore, in the water, everything, right? So we both started getting really excited. I was feeling his energy, and at that time, he had a Ron House board he liked that he was trying to get Surf Tech to go to production with, and Surf Tech having to go through all the tooling, steps and everything they need to do to get it to production was going to take quite a while. And he was a little impatient with that, which I can imagine. So we ended up getting a board from Ron House and molding it. I talked to Ron, and we negotiated basically like a design royalty. And I made a fiberglass mold and started making them the way you'd make a surf ski. It was a hollow sandwich construction, top bottom half mold with a flange mold, and we put styrofoam stringers inside to close the thing together. And they actually worked pretty well. And we probably made 20 or 30 of them the first year just because people were, and the only board you could get at the time was the Mickey Munoz longboard, which was really a tandem board. It was kind of narrow. So a lot of people were surfing and paddling those. So yeah, we started making those, and within a year, my design was obsolete because they started getting fatter and shorter for surf. And then of course, race boards weren't even, a thought at that time. And so that's how I kind of got into it. And then Laird had a lot of friends and celebrity type people that were getting into it through his contacts. And then and I met Dave shortly after that. I knew of Dave and had a friend that worked for me that was going to Hawaii and giving Dave some of my paddles, I believe. And then it wasn't until Dave and Laird were doing that, actually like a how-to sup video that they never launched, but this was like when City was maybe just a year old, 15 years ago. And I met Jimmy Lewis there too. So I met Jimmy, Laird, and Dave Kalama up at Don Wildman's house up in Malibu. And that's when we all got excited and just started sharing more stories and got to know Dave better, and then started working a lot more with Dave, making paddles for him to do the Molokai crossing and whatnot. And Dave and I have been working together with paddles for a long time, and Laird and I did too. And I still send Laird paddles, occasionally when he asks me for paddles for the guys he's working with up there. In fact, for a while we did a Laird branded paddle like for a number of years. But so yeah, it was a lot of fun working with those guys, and just their enthusiasm and excitement for stand-up was, and the best thing about it for me actually was, high kneel canoeing is pretty hard on the body, and I'd kind of gotten out of it, basically retired from it and was just doing outrigger canoeing when stand-up came along. And stand-up actually feels a lot like high kneel canoeing, except you do it on both sides. But when you're on your good side, as a high kneel canoe paddle, you only paddle on the right or the left typically. So it's funny, I was a goofy-footed surfer, and I'd only surfed a handful of times before I started sup surfing. But with the paddle in my hand, I felt more comfortable being a regular footer because when I'm high kneeling in the canoe, my left foot's forward. So I sup surf regular foot, and when I normally surf or skateboard or snowboard, I'm a goofy footer.
Really?
So, yeah,
so you're ambidextrous. Well,
yeah.
that works well for a paddle person.
Evidently, yeah. So anyway, but that's how it kind of all took off. And then the racing thing came along because Laird and Ron were testing like boards that would be faster for crossings. And I knew the guy that was putting on the Catalina Challenge. There used to be a relay that went from Avalon to Dana Point. It's a 40-mile race. A lot of people remember this because the SUP became included in it. But
yeah, I got to do it once before.
Yeah, exactly. So I called the organizer, Chris, at that time, and I said, "Hey, we want to come up and paddle boards. I think I can get Laird to come over because we're going to test some boards." So he's like, "Well, I don't have a division, but if 3 of you show up, we'll make a class or whatever." So well, I don't care about that. We just want to paddle. And is it okay? He's like, "Oh yeah, by all means, come up." So Laird came up from Malibu and got there literally a little bit after we were supposed to start, but we kind of all put in around the same time and started heading for Dana Point. And I remember it was Jeff Sweet and Laird was there, and Tim Comerford and a few guys that Laird brought down. And then Jack Gillen came over from the Big Island. Jack was my partner because it was like a relay, right? And this is before I was paddling with Kyle. You know, Kyle and I did the crossing together a couple times, I believe, and I did it with Dane DeBoer once. But yeah, it was, and John Becker, Matt Becker. Yeah, so we did that relay a few times after that. But that was the first year and the first time we sort of raced on SUPs. And then that same year, that was, or maybe even just before that, was the Hobie. You know, Sean and I were talking about that. You know, I remember it was just Chuck and I and another couple guys there. We did a race that Hobie put on at Salt Creek.
Hennessy's?
At Salt Creek, yeah. It was the Hennessy's one. And then the Tahoe Nala was starting around that time. I think Ernie was claiming that he was the oldest SUP race. And he might be then, but I think Hobie was a little bit before that.
It's still going, I think.
Yeah. And then, but I started calling all the guys I knew that put on the ocean, you know, OC1 surf ski classes and said, hey, you know, can we come along? And in the beginning, a lot of those races didn't have a division for us, but after the first year, when a bunch of us showed up, by the next year they had a division. And within a few years, SUP, as everybody knows, it was around at the time, became the biggest division by far. I remember there was like over 300 or if not 400 SUPs at Honolulu one year, the San Diego race. So yeah, it grew fast and everybody's having a ball with it and everything. And yeah, it was a fun ride.
That's great. So you were in it both as the builder and innovator and talking with people and racing yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to hear the perspective about things that you like about SUP. I didn't really ever think about high Neil is a little bit higher than on your.
Yeah. So I started calling like Larry Kane and, you know, tried to talk him into it. And in the beginning he was like, oh, I don't surf. And I said, no, you'll love it. Trust me. It's like more like C1 paddling. So he eventually got aboard and a paddle and started, you know, racing. He came down, met me at the Carolina Cup. And then, you know, Tommy Budai. I mean, those are some of the canoe guys that are doing now. And then it's funny that all the guys who are on my 84 Olympic team, all but one of them ended up getting into SUP paddling.
Really?
You know, Rob McLean from Maine, Rob Plankenhorn from Indianapolis. He did the Carolina Cup a couple times and went up to Gary Stone's race and up in Madison, Wisconsin. And then another friend of mine from Connecticut, Brett Young, got it. So it was kind of a way for me to like reconnect with a lot of my old canoeing friends, you know, which was cool. Yeah.
That's fun. That's been a neat part of this, seeing crossover athletes and then athletes that, like, as you said, some people had that, you know, kind of blinders on at first that because of who Laird was and Dave Kalama, that it had to be surf. But how interesting that they had the vision right from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Dave was doing you know, I think it was Archie Kalepo was one of the first guys that did the Molokai crossing on a SUP. Then Todd Bradley and got into it early on, and you know, those guys got, you know, the C4 brand going. But yeah, there was Jimmy Lewis was pretty instrumental in a lot of the board shapes. In fact, the race we did in Malibu, Jimmy Lewis had sent kind of an unlimited board over for Laird to use, and that's when Chuck and Kyle and I had still the basic like 12 footers, you know, that we were paddling, which worked good. I mean, you know, I enjoyed racing those boards too, you know, but like once we got the, you know, the unlimiteds, you know, it's funny, it went from that to the unlimiteds for a while. And it wasn't until like the Molokai race, that's kind of where the 14-foot class came from, because at Molokai, the stock division is 14. And then the 12.6 division basically was invented and created by the Bow of the Paddle. And if I recall, the rules didn't say 12.6, it was 12.5 feet. Because there was a lot of boards at the time that were 12.1, 12.2, like the Ron House and the Surf Tech production board was 12.1, I think. And I had a board that was 12.2. So we said, oh, you can't make it 12, because I know Sparky was trying to make it more of a size that the Hawaiians could bring boards over easier, you know. And but everybody around here was paddling like boards are around 12 feet, so they ended up making the limit 12.5 feet. Yeah.
Well, that's a whole separate, we could do an hour on the discussion of where they came from and why. Well, it isn't, but it is, yes. But there's still good things to discuss. Hey, we have a question here. Somebody who's on their lunch break and wants to know. It's Adam from the Pacific Northwest. One question, can we get a deep dive on the T2 paddle, pretty please? So we haven't talked so much about, but you are the mad scientist. You are a tinkerer, as you called yourself.
That's a
Tell
good
us about,
question.
is that your latest?
So I just happen to have some behind me.
Yay.
So this has been our most popular seller for stand-up lately, that like on the high end. It's got the the scoop was kind of created by the previous model we had, which was called the V drive, which had straight double dihedral Vs. And that was actually Dave Kalama's idea that we both sort of created some prototypes. And it was the shape that Dave actually hand shaped that we ended up thinking was the best. And then we cleaned it up, you know, and went to production with that. And we ended up making it in several sizes, like a 71, 81, 91, 101, you know, because you have different size blades in that model. So with we took what we liked about that and we just even enhanced it more. So the scoop in this blade, if you can see it here, is much deeper, right? So a lot of people really like the extra power that the scoop creates. It's basically trying to make a paddle that is smaller but works like a bigger blade. Like my theory is if you had a paddle that was as big as my hand, do what a big blade does, it'd be more efficient because it takes less time to put it in, take it out, less energy to put it in, take it out. So it's trying to make a blade that holds its ground in the water but goes in clean, comes out clean. So to answer his question about the T2, this outline shape is a marriage of the previous trifecta and the V drive. The trifecta is the narrower tipped paddle. So what Tituan wanted to try was the trifecta paddle, but with the outline shape of the UV. So the T2 is, it's probably back here here it is. Look at that, I don't even have to go far to get these.
Yay, impressed.
So here's the T2, it's a single dihedral, okay? So the single dihedral is designed to stabilize the blade a little bit more. And it still has sort of basically a double concave surface, you know, between the dihedral and these edges that sort of blends out. So the tip is actually, you can see that, you know, almost straight. But it's the same blade angle, same outline as the UV. So we're talking the same language in the shape, like we're kind of dialed in on, you know, the shape is, well, in inches, it's 18 inches to the neck. And about 7, I think this one's maybe just under 7 inches wide. Back in the day, most of the blades were like 9 inches wide when we started, but the trend's been evolving smaller to a point, but our best-selling blade size is about 85 square inches. We sell a lot of 90, you know, around between 80 and 90, you know, low 90 square inch size blades. People wonder what these numbers mean.
Consistent downward trend in size?
Yeah, it went down and then it came back up. I think once people realized, okay, we're going too small, you know, and really, you know, it's funny, like it feels easier when you use a smaller paddle. But what happens is you get to a point of diminishing returns and you're actually not going faster, you know, so you got to kind of pay attention. And generally speaking, the bigger you are, you need a little bigger blade. But in the end, it comes down to what kind of stroke rate, tempo, and your style, and what feels right for you. And it's just like cycling. Not everybody will be pedaling in the exact same gear. You know, like you'll be riding with some guys that are, like I do a little bit of road biking, you know, and I'll be like one of the guys in our group likes to spin a little higher cadence. And some guys are a little bit more power cyclists, a little lower cadence. So paddling's the same way. You know, some guys feel like they find a better efficiency at a lower rate. Some find it at a little higher tempo. So, so that's the deep dive on the T2. If
nice.
If you have additional questions, the weight's about the same. The construction's the same. It's just basically the cross-sectional shapes are different between the two.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And yeah, certainly if anybody else has specific paddle questions, we can talk about that. But I wanted to hear about, unless you want to talk, did you want to say something more about those two?
No, that's fine.
Paddles. You just went on an amazing road trip. And if you guys don't know, part of the pandemic, or maybe started before, you have built the most gorgeous set of watercraft ever. Just beautiful wood. Like I feel like they shouldn't be in the water. They're too pretty. They should be in a museum or hanging on the wall. Yeah. But you took those on a road trip and we're gone over a month, weren't you? So
yeah,
walk us through
my
that
road trip, it's funny you ask because I have a diagram of what I did actually.
Oh, nice.
So
cool.
In July, if you remember, I started in Newport, drove up to Lake Tahoe. I saw you there actually. Yeah. To the Tahoe Nalo. Ernie put on the Tahoe Nalo. I raced my OC2. The boats are here, by the way. I can pan over and you can kind of see them. That's the bow of the C2. You can kind of see it up there. Yeah, and if you want to send, you probably have some nice pictures that have all of them. There's more pictures on my Instagram page. But so I paddled the OC2 with my friend Jay Wild's son, Jaxie. And on the first day, which was the shorter race, I think it was like a 5K. And then the second day I raced with Jay Wild, who runs, him and his wife, Anik, run Tahoe Waterman up there. Yeah. that was a lot of fun. So I had my OC1, my OC2, and my Sprint canoe with me. So then I went up to the gorge, and I got there. There was no wind at all, so the boats came in handy for paddling on the river. We were basically just paddling downstream and back upstream. You know, didn't even bother going down to Viento, if you're familiar with the gorge run, because there was no wind. And Dave Klum was up there doing some foil boarding and running those around. And when there's no wind, and he and I would go paddle the 2-man together. So I got Dave out there. So that was up in Hood River. Well, then our Sprint Canoe Nationals were in Oklahoma, which I haven't been to in like 20 years. But so once I drove to here, I stopped in Twin Falls, Idaho, and in Flaming Gorge in Wyoming to paddle. We got to Oklahoma, and I spent a week there. The Nationals run 4 days. And one of the French Olympians used my Sprint canoe in the big Super Cup money race there, which was cool.
Fun.
And then I raced C1, C2 with Doug Ellery, he's coaching the San Diego Canoe Kayak team right now. And then we raced C4, so I raced with San Diego Canoe Kayak team, and we did all right. I hadn't raced in years, but it was a lot of fun reconnecting. A bunch of my friends, their kids paddle now, so they're back in racing. Mm-hmm. So once I was this far, I needed to be in Chattanooga. Well, where's Chattanooga? Over here, in October. So since I'm already 2/3 of the way there, I figured I'll just leave my truck there for a couple months, come back here. And I bought a vehicle for the family because my daughter's driving now. Used that for 2 months, went back, got my truck, and then went on to Chattanooga and did a clinic the weekend before Chattajack. Drove up to Cincinnati, where I'm from to see family and paddle with some friends. Came back to Chattajack. Then it was 2 weeks before Carolina Cup, so I spent a week going down and seeing all my dealers in Florida. And I did a race at Urban Kai and one over here at Jupiter. Jeremy Vane, if he's watching, he does a really nice job running some races on, I think it's a Tuesday night or Thursday night race league. So I participated in that and my OC1. So my Dave Spitzer and I raced OC2 at Chattajack, and my C1 got raced by Ian Ross. He did the whole 32 miles high kneel. And then Brett Fillmore raced my OC1, so all 3 boats got used at Chattajack. And then Carolina Cup was good. T2 was there. Shrimpy from Japan, him and his dad Taku were there, so I got to see some of my team riders I hadn't seen in a while. And Itzel, Delgado, and a few others. So I got to see my team riders race OC2, and then I picked up Ian Ross to help me drive back, and we paddled in Alabama, Austin, Texas. Went to White Sands, played around the sand dunes there, then went on to paddle in Phoenix at Tempe Town Lake. And then we did the dam race just last weekend, or was it last weekend or the weekend before? I think it was, maybe just 2 weekends ago. Anyway,
weekend before, yeah.
Now I'm back. Yeah, it all runs together. But yeah, it was 9,500 miles, and I think I hit 25 states when you add it all up. So.
Quite a trip. And if you're listening carefully, those of you who do race and are interested, he named some of the best, biggest meetups. That's how I think of them, because we have such a great race community from Tahoe and the Gorge and Chattajack and Carolina Cup. Those are some of the biggest, plus great local series and stuff like the ones you went to down at the shops in Arizona and Florida. Great stuff. So congratulations on that big tour. Take a picture of that map. I want to stick that on our Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll do. I'll send you a picture. So
impressive, very impressive.
That trip gave me an idea. Vel Ardiaz, if any of you have gone over or heard of the Euro Tour, that's Absolutely. Essentially what he's trying to establish in Europe is take some existing races that have been around, but then create some new ones and try and set them up to where international athletes can come over and kind of hit 3 or 4 in a row, because they're fairly close. And they have a couple sprinter vans they put all the boards in and trailers to try and trailer and help transport boats for people that logistically wouldn't be able to pull it off. And I was thinking in the U.S., if we kind of put our heads together and created some races that kind of coincide with each other, to where some of the brands could have a rig with a trailer of boards to kind of make it user friendly to get some international paddlers here, and just kind of so people don't have to do what I did and drive everywhere. But
I love it. Let's talk. Yeah. You want to be that rig? You gonna drive?
I could. Yeah. I need a trailer, but I had double racks on my truck that can take. I remember coming back from Hood River one year. I had 9 14-foot sups on top of my truck.
Oh my gosh.
3 on the bottom level and then 6 on the top level. So
on your truck without a
the
trailer.
idea was Chris Barker came back with me, and Lincoln Dews, we could pull the and Jonas met up with us so we could pull all the boards off the bottom row and paddle somewhere and then put them all back on easy enough without having to take the 6 on top off. But I see some of these big sprinter vans that are pretty user friendly for that, if you've got a long enough one to get the 14s inside. But.
Yeah. Believe me, as I'm getting older, that's a big thing. I do have one of those vans now. I just slide it right up the middle. It just barely fits right up to the coffee holders.
Yeah.
But I
my
think
OC2 is 26 feet, so I don't think they make sprinter vans that long.
But that's an obstacle to stand-up paddleboarding. Even though we have one of the most versatile and easy to carry watercrafts, you still have to get it places. So like I just posted about that Sayulita race. I don't know if you got down to it in Mexico.
I did go down once, yeah.
Well, they're bringing it back in March. But for the big question people ask is, because most people don't want to even attempt to fly with boards, which you can do sometimes, but it has not gotten easier. How do I get a board? Where do I rent a board? So what Bilar has done, I think, in Eurotour is really a great model and has stuck around for quite a while and something to follow.
Well, if there's enough people interested, I don't know how long of a drive that would be. If it makes better sense to ship them or have somebody drive them.
Yeah, that one's a bit of a drive.
Yeah, right.
I think that one would be multiple days. But hey, maybe they could connect a series and make it, maybe in March where the weather's nicer for people who are snowbirds. They might do a series in Mexico or something.
Yeah, they just had an outrigger canoe race down, I think it was down near Cabo somewhere. I'm not sure where. They took a couple 6-mans down and or I don't know how many they took down, but I know some paddlers went down to do that. I haven't heard anything about it yet. But
it's actually a local friend got that started, and they would like to have Sup in it too.
Yeah, there you go.
Alex Del Toro here in Laguna. I think that was his brainchild.
Oh, cool.
And it looked like it was successful. Yeah, good stuff. So you're an expert in paddles. You're an expert in the whole paddling world. But maybe we could get some tips in. How about for someone buying a paddle? We talked about that, the importance of getting a paddle. What are some things to look for when you're buying your first good paddle? Sometimes you start with the adjustable because you're sharing it with your family. But when you're paddling enough, you need one that's fit for you.
Yeah, exactly. Our approach is you try and assess how active they are going to be with it. Are they going to be just paddling on the weekends, a handful of times a year? Are they going to be going every day? And like we both said earlier, investing in a good paddle early on is important. So basically I tell people it's like buying a bike. There's $10,000 road bikes, but for me, it's a better bike than I am a rider. If I'm just going to go on the weekends and ride with my friends, and I'm fine with a $2,000 bike, right? So the top of the line paddles we sell are $500, but we make one that's a hybrid version. If you can see them in the background, the ones with the colored blades, those are the high-end model, those ones up there. But they're $100 cheaper. They're $399, and the only difference is they're a teeny bit heavier on the average, and they have a little more flex. Which a little more flex is actually not a bad thing if you're not racing. If you want a good paddle for the money that's going to last and be a good shape, good design, good balance, all that kind of stuff. There's a $499 option and a $399 option. And then if you're really just sort of the weekend warrior, or you're going to be sharing, and it's for you and your wife, or you and a friend, we make the Kanaha, which has been like our bread and butter paddle for years. And that one now is priced at $249, and the fixed length $269 as an adjustable. And the adjustables are nice if you're sharing, or if you're surfing with it and paddling with it and you want to change the length around. Once people are on the race board and racing, unless you're doing a lot of really focusing on downwinding and course racing and these different disciplines of sup racing, a lot of the pros will have 2 or 3 paddles with slightly 1-2-inch different ranges, but at fixed lengths. Not too many of the pros are racing with adjustables. However, some have and some do, but you'll see in the more in the novice class, and people that aren't necessarily pros and going to all the races on the circuit, you'll start to see more adjustables because they are kind of handy. The trade-off with an adjustable paddle is usually it's adding a little weight. Like we have 2 styles of adjustable handles. On our premium product, we do a really lightweight version with a simple spring button. And if you want it really snug and tight, we just recommend wrapping a little bit of electrical tape around the joint to seal it up so water doesn't go in and it's not moving. That's if you're not going to adjust it while you're using it. The other handle that we've started offering about 2.5-3 years ago now is the lever lock, which you've seen on some other brands. It's has a lever that pulls out of the handle, and you can adjust it to any length. You don't have to the spring button ones are nice and secure, but you can only set them at every inch or every 2 inches, depending on which configuration you get. Or the lever lock one, you can, put it exactly where you want it and play around with it.
Yeah.
And,
So are those considered your travel paddles because they come apart? Oop, I just lost you. Maybe I lost the sound on you. Can you hear me? Shoot. Is somebody calling you? Sometimes that's why it goes away.
No, it said low battery for some reason.
You're back. You're back. I lost that last piece. I asked you about, like, is that kind of a travel paddle?
Oh, the travel paddle. Yeah. Sorry, blinked out. So, we make one that adjusts, or there's another section to it. In other words, it comes apart down a few inches from the blade, and then the handle adjusts too. So it's essentially a 3-piece paddle, where the adjustable paddle is just the paddle with an adjustable handle. Yeah.
Well, as not an elite racer, I have to say I have used that a few times when I've not needed to bring a paddle in a suitcase. One was that relay in St. Thomas.
Oh, right.
The 2 gentlemen I was partners with could not fly with a paddle. So we were hitting that, button during the race to change it for each of us because we only had one paddle to share. Can be handy. So many uses for a good paddle. So you've been so many places, both as an Olympian and as a stand-up paddler and being in this. Are there still bodies of water or places you haven't paddled that you would love to go? Oh, we're having one of those spinning wheels. I hate it when that happens. It was going so well. Oh, frozen at the moment. Hopefully he'll come back on. Do you think there's any place Jimmy hasn't been? Hey, Sup, Ramos. Great to see you. Juan, and thank you. Paula from Uruguay, I saw your comment. And Jimmy will too, I'm sure. He would love to get there. I would love to paddle there. Lots of water. Don't you guys have white water too for the river people here? Let's see if we got him back on. Paddle Safari, Leonardo Cruz. Hopefully we can get Jimmy back on here. Oh, there he is. Juan Carlos from Panama. Hey.
I'm back.
Sorry about that. Who knows these technology things, what happened?
No, as my phone got to 20% and for some reason it just stopped. So I got it plugged in now. We're good.
We've got somebody, I wonder who's on the San Diego Canoe and Kayak Instagram, asking Supconnect. Is that me if I've ever done a high kneel C1? I believe that's the only one I haven't tried because I've rolled right out of a surf ski before, although I've taken a couple lessons from Michelle and Maggie, who are great. Actually, if I bought another craft, I think I'd start with a surf ski. They're so fun and fast. But yes, high kneel canoe looks like to me the most challenging of all the watercraft.
It's known to be one of the most challenging.
But super fun to watch. I love that event they used to have where they had us try almost everything. They didn't ask us to be on a C1, but you remember they mixed it up and we had a little prone race and everything too.
Yeah.
I think that's fun to encourage people to try multiple crafts. Well, I do feel like stand-up has brought a lot of people to the water and then on to other watercrafts. And I know there's been crossover the other way, but I do think stand-up paddling, because it's so accessible, has really helped grow paddle sports overall, which I
completely agree. It's a good starter for outrigger and everything else. And it's compared to surf ski or outrigger, it's not as big of an investment. So, and it's easier to store the boats, so.
That too. Someone was just talking about how it's expensive. And I actually would argue that because of course, there's 2 important pieces of equipment that, just like bicycles, have such a range in price. But after that, it's like golf. You're not paying every time you paddle. You might be
exactly.
paying.
It depends. There's some sports you can play and you don't have to pay for coaching or, a place to use it. But at the elite level, you start to pay for coaching or private help. Any sport can be expensive.
Sure.
But yeah, like skiing and snowboarding, you know, a lot of those sports are you're paying every time you use it, like you said. But you know, cycling, you know, you can get an expensive bike, but once you have a bike, it's good for, you know, a lot of rides in several years if you take care of it. Same with paddleboarding, so or canoeing.
Good stuff.
And actually, canoeing, outrigger canoeing is one of those things where, you know, the boats are expensive, but the resale value on outrigger canoes is actually pretty good right now, which is the interesting thing with SUP. You know, the resale value was good for a while, but there's a point where the market got a little saturated, so the resale value wasn't quite as good. But I think that's going to come back a little bit. You know, as people, like last year with yeah, it was a good year to sell used boards because there was a lot of people that couldn't get boards, you know, during the whole
the whole
pandemic.
supply chain and all the strange problems that the pandemic.
If you're looking to get rid of a used board, now's a good time to do, or probably wait for the spring and start, you know, when people are looking to get boards in the summer and they don't have them.
Yeah, well, it looks like you're doing pretty well, and people have still been buying QuickBlade, and I hope again, these problems with the supply chain and all aren't affecting you too much, because that's tough.
We've managed to stay ahead of it because, you know, we are equipped to do a lot of the, you know, what we need to do in-house, and we do 100% of the assembly in-house, and we source some components, but we can always build, you know, what we need if in a pinch if we have to. So
yeah,
so that helps.
Do you get many custom orders? I of course paddle with Ricky Bobby.
All right.
Who is Susie's paddle is almost always in pictures. So we have Will Farrell, and people are always really surprised to find out that you do that. But I think that's available.
We do it quite a bit, actually. We've been doing some clubs. You know, we'll put the club logo on a paddle. We did some paddles for an Indian tribe up in Washington called Rakol Cree. They came down to Catalina, so we made these really cool purple and green outrigger paddles for them.
Oh, neat.
I'm doing another club, you know, our Indian, you know, paddling club up there too. But yeah, we've done quite a few custom ones here and there, and we have a technology to print the graphic on the raw fiberglass before you even put it in the mold. So the problem is we run them at different temperatures, so I have to sort of cycle them in when I'm not running production paddles in those molds, you know. So sometimes there's a little bit of wait to get the material printed and then to get it into production when we're behind on some stuff. But yeah, we can do custom.
Cool. Hey, one question I asked you about, is there some place you haven't been yet, or some water you haven't paddled, or maybe even an event? I know some things, I think you were going to do a big one even with Chris that got pandemic.
Yeah, the Yukon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the first canoe I actually built was, we built a C4, 23-foot 4-man canoe for the Yukon, which was supposed to be that June of 2019 or 2020. Yeah. So, yeah, losing track already. Seems like a while ago, but, yeah, I was literally like halfway through building the boat when, they announced the race was going to be canceled. Yeah. But then, this year they were supposed to have it for Canadians only, but, it ended up being canceled because of high water of all things, which I guess doesn't happen too often.
Yeah.
But, I guess they, looked at it and realized it was probably a little unsafe for some people, so better not to chance it. So but I hear it's back on. I know Chris is trying to get me to rally for this year, but I haven't quite committed to my 2022 calendar yet, so we'll see. But the canoe is here, it's ready, it's got a little dust on it, needs to get out in the water, so I might pull it out this weekend over Thanksgiving. We'll see. There
you go. What a great idea.
Yeah.
So in building those beautiful boats, it's that you've been a builder for a long time. I remember seeing, and again, it comes by naturally, a tiny little paddle that I think your dad made you. Maybe you said you started at age 3.
Yeah.
Was there always a workshop to work with wood? Like, did you grow up doing that, or have you ever made boats like that before?
Yeah, I always had a passion for woodworking, and my dad built some cedar strip canoes, like 2-man type river canoes. Because this was back before a lot of boats were molded. You know, you had aluminum canoes, and you had fiberglass really didn't come around till, like, I want to say the late 60s, early 70s, when they started making molded fiberglass boats. So they all start with a cedar strip plug typically. You know, you make a cedar strip canoe and you paddle it and test it, and if the shape seems good, then you make a mold of that and then produce fiberglass boats in that. And eventually, when they had Kevlar, Kevlar wasn't really around till, like, I'd say late 70s, and then or mid 70s, maybe in aerospace a little bit before that, but not in water sports. And then carbon fiber really didn't exist till the 80s, you know, early 80s, I'd say. I know that Russians and East Germans had the first composite boats, like in international sprint canoeing, but all the boats were made in Holstebro or in Struer, Denmark, which is like up near where Casper's from. I went to that factory once. They were making these beautiful veneer laminated wood canoes and K1s and kayaks. Beautiful craftsmanship. But so anyway, my dad did cedar strip canoes, so I remember as a little kid pulling the staples out, and he'd pay us with chewing gum to pull the staples. So that was always fun. And then so I'd been around it, but didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. But when I decided to build this C4, I thought, shoot, I can build. I was did a lot of woodworking in high school and built a lot of the furniture that my mom and dad still have in our house. When I was either in high school wood shop, or when I graduated from high school, I worked for Rick Diebold up in Chicago. He was a paddler about 10 years older than me that had a third generation German, high-end custom furniture cabinetry shop that I worked at for a couple of years to make money. And then I'd go paddle all summer and come back and work for him in the winter and save up some money again. So that's how I got a lot of my experience with jigs and the fixtures, to make, things a little easier. And then some people know I worked in aerospace for about 7 years. I worked for a company that makes commercial airplane interiors, which includes seats, ceilings, sidewall, everything on the inside of an airplane. So I learned a lot about manufacturing and tooling and jigs and fixtures and all kinds of clever tricks of the trade. I worked in product development for a brilliant guy named Dick McClure. I learned a lot from him. And so building these canoes here is this, you can learn a lot from YouTube also, every time when I go to bed, I had to go, okay, I'm going to do this. And you can find some ways that other people did it on YouTube. But yeah, I kind of designed them all by hand. The first couple of boats I designed completely by hand, drew with, not even AutoCAD, just did it with French curves and, things I had to design. And the designs came out pretty good, actually. Got to pat myself on the back, especially my two-man. My two-man's 26 feet, so it's a little longer than a couple of the top, like the Hookie and the Gemini are 23, 24. So we've got a little longer water line. Seems to work pretty good in the flatter conditions, especially.
Nice.
So, even though the construction is, I try to make them as light as I could, even though they're out of wood. People are surprised that they're as light as they are, but they're not as light as a carbon boat. But the shapes, I think, are pretty good, so they go all right.
Yeah. Beautiful and look super functional. So that's great. I didn't know you had such a history, but makes sense.
So I'm going to build some more. I'm actually thinking about building a 14-foot hollow sup next.
Nice.
I've been designing it. I've come up with a couple different designs I think would work well. And it's a couple of things I want to try. Yeah. With my next shape. I did design a couple of race boards not too long ago, and I had them shaped in Huntington Beach and then glass just a block from here. Fun. And they came out pretty nice, but I'm looking to do a wood.
Dugout, right? I think I've seen you.
Yeah. In fact, one of the
DeBoer brothers just piped in that they're fast too.
Yeah. They're as fun to paddle as they are to look at, for sure. Yeah. Gorgeous. Dick and Dane, they paddled the C4 and the two-man with me. We had them all three boats out on 4th of July, last 4th of July. It was fun.
And DeBoer, your ears should be burning because we were talking about you ages ago. Your name was thrown in with all those early adopters like Jimmy.
Yeah.
So I know you have some hidden talents. I think one of them is sharing your knowledge. And the flume, I'm sorry it's gone now, but I was one of the lucky ones to get to, paddle and get some advice from you, paddling in that circular water thing. But one of your best hidden talents is accents. So you're going to you tell such a great story, and you've had so many coaches, but I don't want to put you on the spot. I should have asked you first, but you want to throw out some advice from one of your old coaches?
I've got a few of them. I'll start with Willie. Willie Reichenstein. Some of you might know Will Reichenstein, the son, but Willie's been a big mentor of mine as well, and he has a morning paddling group. We meet at 5:45 in the morning every morning. Woo! And we paddle. So we're on the water at dark and then off the water by 7. That's like clockwork. If you're there at 5:46, you're going to miss the workout. Yeah. And but he's got a lot of good one-liners, with this Scottish accent. But one of my favorites was when I was younger. I think I'd been out drinking with some of my friends the night before, and he could tell on my face I was a little hungover, but I was still there, right? And he looked at me and says, "Oh, you can't be out hunting with the owls if you want to soar with the eagles in the morning, lad," he said to me. So that one always kind of resonates in my head, So, but he's got a lot of good one-liners. One of his famous lines was he was doing like a talk in Dana Point. In fact, some of the Dana Point guys today were probably around now were there. And it was about training and periodization. And like, he has a degree in exercise science, physiology, kinesiology. And afterwards, he opened it up to people asking questions. And they were asking questions about equipment, how high the seat should be, the paddling, and stuff like that. And he patiently answered a couple of those questions until finally said something like, let me tell you something about equipment. He goes, Lance Armstrong could, well, actually, he said, Greg LeMond could probably win the Tour de France on my bike, but I sure as hell couldn't win it on his. He's like, the most important piece of equipment is the last thing you put in the boat, and that's your bum. Because if your bum's not in shape, you got no business being out there. Now, quit wasting my time. But something like that. So if Willie's watching, I think he knows by now that I like to do Willie imitations. But the other one's Hungarian. I saw SDCKT watching. Joe Harper, if you're in San Diego. Csaba Santos was our Hungarian coach, my coach from basically 1985, 86, 87, up till 88. And he, with his Hungarian accent, he used to say, you are young, you feel you can to do, just do it, must to do, he used to say. And this was before Nike had the saying, just do it. Because he was always saying, oh, I see you very tired, but must to do, he said.
Must to do.
Yeah, I see you need to do it, just do it. He would always say that. And then when Nike came out with just do it, he was, guys, they take my saying, just do it. I'm saying this. so he had some funny, some funny lines, but he used to always look at you paddling and say, don't go slower, okay, that in his Hungarian accent, come on, don't go slower. And what does he mean by don't go slower? Like, it's pretty obvious. But sometimes things are lost in the translation of words, but I had an Australian coach that had some great lines too, Reg Hatch. He used to say, to make the Olympic final, or he says, is 90% mental, 10% physical. Or no, the other way around. He said, to make the Olympic final is 90% physical, 10% mental. He goes, but to win the Olympic final is 90% mental and 10% physical. He goes, we're all the same from here to here. It's here to here you got to work on. He used to make a box around your head.
Here to here.
Yeah. And I think he was another famous line of Reg's was, hey, mate, you're not that don't wrap yourself in bubble wrap, mate. You're not that fragile. He used to say to you, basically, like, don't be so easy on yourself. You're tougher than that. Like, don't, treat yourself like a baby.
Oh, my gosh. Great.
So, yeah, I
coaching
could go on.
lines, all of
I got a
those.
lot of good ones, but I'll stop there before I get myself in trouble.
Well, it has been an hour, and what a great way to end with all that great advice, and what a memory you have. I mean, we need at some point down the line, we're going to have a museum of stand-up paddling, and not only will you be in it, but we're going to need you to remind us of all the people who are in at the very beginning. So, so appreciate everything that you've shared, knowledge about your paddles and your company and your whole story. Such good stuff. You better be following this guy, because he really is one of our, thought leaders and most knowledgeable in stand-up paddling, and of course, just the broader paddling world. So thank you.
Thank
Jim
you.
Terrell.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate you taking the time.
When you go to make that museum, come see me, because I've got a big pile of paddles that didn't work very good. It's much bigger than the pile of paddles that actually work really good.
Well, that's part of being a mad scientist.
Yeah,
right?
We can put some of those in there too.
Love it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And thanks everyone for listening. And if you have friends that didn't get to hear this, let them know it's immediately saved on IGTV, which is on Supconnect's Instagram. And then by tomorrow, we'll have it out on YouTube, both on Supconnect and KT Outside mine.
All right. Thanks
Kristen.
Again. You're as fun to talk to as Chris.
Wow. I'm honored. Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate your time. Take care and happy Thanksgiving.